2 minutes ago, Britain felt like a pressure cooker. Outside a quiet hotel now housing asylum seekers, hundreds gathered with banners and boiling frustration. Enough is enough, they shouted, not just at the building, but at a system they say has failed them. Just days earlier, a poll revealed what many already felt. Around 2/3 of Britons believe immigration is too high. Almost half say it is damaging the country. Over 4 in 5 say the nation feels divided. Tonight, that number is no longer ink on paper. It is a crowd in the cold, demanding to be heard.
More than 100,000 people have gathered at a far-right rally in London, organised by anti-Islam activist Tommy Robinson. Police say they made several arrests after attempts to breach barriers between the far-right and counter-demonstrators.
The poll that gave anger a number. For years, people have watched the same pattern repeat in their lives. Rent takes more of the pay packet each month. Estate agents report dozens of applicants for a single flat. General practitioner surgeries are full before midday, leaving patients turned away. Classrooms designed for 20 whole 30 children sharing worn textbooks. Headlines change, but the pressures do not. Record net migration, new visa routes, small boats arriving on grey beaches in Kent, hotels pressed into service as emergency asylum accommodation. Ministers promise the system will finally be under control. In homes across the country, the conversations are blunt. I do not mind people coming here, but how many more can we take? Why is my daughter still on the housing list while a hotel down the road is full of new arrivals? These frustrations are not isolated. They stretch across Midlands towns where factories have closed, coastal communities where tourism has dried up, and suburbs where one house now holds 3 families. On social media, the complaints scroll endlessly. On the ground, people feel promises have quietly failed. Then came the Ipsos poll. It did not create anger. It gave it a number and a headline. Almost half of respondents said immigration has a negative impact on the United Kingdom. A clear majority said it worsens the housing situation. Many said it strains hospitals and clinics. Around 2/3 said immigration levels are too high. More than 4/5 said the country feels divided. For those already frustrated, one line cut through everything. If so many people feel things are out of control, who is really in charge? Those numbers quickly left spreadsheets. They appeared in bold graphics, on news bulletins, on radio shows, in local community pages and across social media. In one corner, they were used to demand tougher borders. In another, cited as evidence that the national conversation had gone off track. Away from the studios, reactions were simpler. People saw the poll and realised we are not a fringe. We are the majority. We should act like it.
Anti-asylum protesters have marched on London. Hotel demos are now a weekly affair. Attacks on the streets have increased, leaving many black and brown Britons living in fear.
From quiet frustration to loud voices. In a Facebook group for parents at a primary school, someone posted the poll with a single line. We are the 67%. We need to do something. A WhatsApp chat for residents near an asylum hotel went from complaints about traffic to planning a protest. The first demonstration was small. A few hundred people gathered outside a hotel, holding homemade signs and speaking through a single loudhailer. Police watched from a distance. Residents told their stories. A woman bidding for social housing for years and still waiting. A man standing in a general practitioner queue for 7 hours with his father in a chair, a mother unable to get her child into speech therapy. Some blamed government policy, some blamed immigration, most blamed both. On its own, that day might have stayed local, but Britain in 2025 is not built for local stories. A clip of an older man with a walking stick, nearly in tears, was posted by a national journalist. A young woman insisting she was not racist but distrustful of government numbers was cut to 20 seconds and spread on a video sharing app. A shot of officers standing between residents and hotel doors appeared with the caption, "Is this what control looks like?" Within days, the slogan spread far beyond that first car park. In another Midlands town, residents gathered outside a business hotel now housing asylum seekers. In a Scottish city, a column marched from the town square to a conference centre accommodating new arrivals. On the south coast, locals met after footage showed another small boat landing. Seen from above, Britain looked like a map of small fires. A few hundred people outside a hotel, several thousand moving through a city centre, 50 residents waving flags at a roadside. Drone footage of crowds in London and regional towns. Timeline from 1 minute and 30 seconds to 1 minute and 50 seconds. As the protest grew, the language hardened. Speakers stopped talking about concern in some communities and started calling themselves the 67%. This is not far right, one woman shouted. This is not fringe. This is most of the country finally saying no. The crowd answered not with policy, but with the same 3 words chanted in the first hotel car park.
But essentially what we know is 898 people arrived in small boats yesterday. They think around 13 boats. That's according to Home Office official figures, but it does mean that 25,000 migrants arrived in the UK, crossing the Channel this year. Now, just to put that in context,
enough is enough. The people in these crowds are not uniform. On some streets, older, white residents wrapped in flags dominated. On others, the picture was more complex. A mixed heritage mother pushed a buggy, insisting her anger was at government mismanagement, not the new arrivals. A man whose parents arrived in the 1970s worried that a broken system could provoke backlash against all migrants. A care worker with an African accent held a sign reading, "We came to help. They failed us both." Side by side, 2 stories were playing out, one of frustration over a system that feels broken and one of migration arriving at the heart of national debate. The 67% on the streets. This is not one march in one city. It is a patchwork of weekends and evenings from coastal towns to Midlands estates. In some places, the protests are almost like petition drives with banners. Families come with children, local councillors hover at the edges, taking notes and taking care not to be seen as too close or too distant. People complain about general practitioner appointments, bus routes, school places, and then fold immigration into the middle of all of it. In other places, the atmosphere is sharper. Outside a hotel in a former industrial town, a man in a high visibility jacket tells the crowd that the system is putting strangers ahead of locals. A chant starts about our own first. People nod because they feel they have been last for too long. If you point a camera at the families and the pensioners, this looks like a broad, anxious middle demanding answers. If you point it a few metres to the side, the picture changes. At the edges, flags and symbols associated with long-standing far-right groups begin to appear. Chants that have nothing to do with housing or hospitals rise and fall. Counter-protesters arrive with anti-racist banners and accuse the organisers of stoking hate. That mix is where the story gets twisted. One television channel frames the marches as Britons of all backgrounds demanding answers on migration levels. Another leads with far-right groups seizing on immigration anger to spread hate. On social media, people post only the clips that confirm what they already believe. 2 realities form on the same streets. For organisers, that is the nightmare and the temptation. Anger gets attention. Attention gets numbers. But numbers also draw in those who want to turn a housing protest into something darker. Where do you stand on these protests? Are they a call for action, a warning, or something else entirely? Tell us in the comments. Every perspective matters. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future updates and in-depth analysis, and hit like if you value seeing the full story rather than just the clips trending online. When extremists smell a chance, where there is fear, there is opportunity. On encrypted messaging channels, some far-right activists talk openly about riding the wave of anger over migration. They share protest details, turn poll numbers into slogans and circulate edited clips that strip away the families and leave only the shouting faces. At the same time, anti-racism campaigners warn that treating immigration primarily as a threat will make these groups stronger. They point to attacks on hotels and hostels, to graffiti, to people confronted in the streets simply because they look or sound foreign. On the ground, most people at these demonstrations would insist they are not there for hate. They are there because they cannot get what they feel they were promised: a house, a doctor, a school place, a sense of order. But they do not control every banner, every chant, or every camera angle. The risk is obvious. The more often the 67% gather in the street, the more chances extremists have to slip into the picture and claim to speak for everyone. While all of this is unfolding under grey British skies, another Briton is watching on screens how power watches the revolt. In a Home Office operations room in London, large screens flicker with a patchwork of live feeds. One camera tracks a line of demonstrators winding past shuttered shops. Another shows police officers holding the line against a sudden surge near hotel doors. A third captures counter-protesters chanting their own slogans behind a police cordon. Every movement, every gesture is watched, analysed, recorded. Alongside the video, graphs from the same polls that sparked the protest dominate the walls. A bar shows concern about immigration, towering above lines for the economy, the National Health Service, and housing. A pie chart illustrates how many people say immigration levels are too high. A line graph traces rising concern about small boats over recent years. Officials do not label this as anger or fear. They call it sentiment and pressure on the system. A senior civil servant points at the figures and says this is what the next election will be about. A political advisor mutters that a rival party is already drafting slogans using the 67% statistic. A policing commander watches the screens and worries about exhausted officers, some of whom have been on protest duty since the previous summer. Across town, at party headquarters, strategists replay clips from the marches alongside past speeches. They mark the gap between promises made and promises delivered. People think we lost control, one says. They do not believe targets or slogans anymore. Another replies, half serious, half weary. So we announce new ones. Stricter rules, firm caps, flights, boats, numbers. We sound tougher than the last lot. In kitchens, pubs and living rooms, that conversation echoes. Citizens remember prior pledges of control, deterrence and management, all of which failed to meet expectations. The gap between the figures on the screen and the anger on the street is a gulf no chart can capture, and on one particular day in one particular town, that gap would become visible in real time. The minister who turned back in a Midlands town that has become a symbol of the hotel protests, a government minister, agrees to visit. The event is advertised as a listening exercise. For residents, it feels like a rare chance to speak directly to someone with real power. For the Home Office, it is an opportunity to be seen engaging with citizens. As the black government car turns into the street, word spreads through the crowd, voices rise, people press forward not to attack, but to be seen and heard. Officers, already tense from weeks of unrest in other towns, tighten their line. The first chants are ragged, hesitant, but they grow stronger with every moment. The minister steps out, flanked by security. For a brief moment, it looks as though they might approach the barrier, look people in the eye, answer questions. Microphones stretch forward, cameras roll. A woman at the front shouts that she has been on the housing list for years. A man further back waves the poll front page in the air, a stark reminder of the statistic that now dominates national attention. Then a plastic bottle arcs overhead and lands near the car. It does not strike anyone, but it is enough. Officers close ranks immediately. The security team makes a rapid decision. The minister delivers a short statement about understanding concerns and balancing compassion with control. Their words are nearly drowned out by the crowd, and within seconds they are back in the car. The driver reverses slowly, then moves away along the route they came, past banners, chanting residents and cameras capturing every detail. Drone and handheld footage frame a single defining image: a black car retreating from a wall of determined citizens. Clip of the minister's car reversing away from chanting residents. Timeline from 3 minutes and 10 seconds to 3 minutes and 30 seconds. The image spreads almost instantly. The video does not focus on the words, the speech, or the careful phrasing of the minister. It focuses on a car moving backwards, leaving a wall of people behind. Captions proliferate. They hear the 67% and run. Democracy in 2025. Minister flees own voters. Within hours, the clip is on loop across news channels and shared endlessly on social media. For many watching, it becomes the emblem of the entire argument, power literally turning its back on the people it claims to serve. By nightfall, the chants fade. Residents drift away past police vans and journalists packing up equipment. The hotel doors slide open and shut as staff come and go. Lights remain on in the rooms. But outside, the air is heavy with the quiet residue of protest, a mixture of relief, frustration, and the knowledge that the anger and the questions are far from over.
Today in Nuneaton, Market Day, where there were larger protests earlier this month. A smaller gathering of protesters by mid-afternoon.
This is the third protest that we've been to in a third town within really a 30-mile radius within the West Midlands. And this one here in Nuneaton, it's very peaceful.
But from the smallest protest to the largest, this is an issue mobilising people no matter where they live.
After the chants, the questions. In a flat overlooking the hotel, a young woman who fled across borders scrolls through her phone. She sees the clip of the car, the faces, the banners outside the building where she now sleeps. For a moment, it feels like the whole country is shouting at her, even though she knows most of the people outside would say they are angry at a system, not at her. In a semi-detached house a few streets away, a delivery driver who joined the protest watches the same clip on the evening news with his teenage son. The presenter talks about rising tensions over migration and concerns about far-right exploitation. The father shakes his head and says that is not what it was. His son shrugs and replies, that is what everyone will think now. Elsewhere, families have quieter conversations. Some feel proud that ordinary people finally stood up. Others worry about how quickly a crowd can turn into something uglier. Some wish they had gone. Others are relieved they stayed home. Ministers respond with familiar tools, announcements about faster asylum decisions, tougher action against people smugglers, stricter rules on who can come. Phrases like balanced approach and firm but fair return to the podiums. Many listening have heard almost identical lines before. For campaigners who support more open borders, the protests are a warning about a country sliding into scapegoating. For organisers who talk about the 67%, they are a warning about what happens when people feel unheard for too long. Underneath all of it are problems that cannot be carried on a banner. If housing has not kept up with population growth for decades, who's accountable for that? If hospitals are overloaded, is that about migration, funding choices, or both? If wages in some sectors have stagnated, is the cause the movement of people or the decisions of employers and governments who set the rules? Immigration has become the screen onto which all these frustrations are projected. It is simpler to blame a boat or a hotel than a spreadsheet of budget lines or a decade of choices. But behind the numbers are deeper questions. Who keeps people safe, not just from crime, but from falling through the cracks of a stretched system? Who decides how many come, where they live, and how the places they move to are supported? Who can most people trust to tell the truth about numbers and consequences when that truth is uncomfortable? If people no longer believe their leaders have control of the border, the budget, or even the story, they will look elsewhere for certainty. Sometimes that means neighbours and community organisers. Sometimes it means those who thrive on chaos and division. The next shock will come. It might be a new conflict sending people across continents. It might be an economic crisis, a crime, a new wave of arrivals that no one predicted. When it does, the same questions will surface again. Will most people feel that someone listened before the chanting started? Or will they once more feel they have to stand in the cold outside a building they never chose as a symbol and shout, "Enough is enough," just to be noticed? Tell us what you think. Is this a justified demand for control, a dangerous turn against migrants, or something messier in between? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to understand what is really happening behind the headlines the next time Britain erupts, make sure you subscribe so you do not miss the next video, and tap like so that more people see the full story, not just the 30-second clips.